Game Dev Journey. Hello everyone and welcome to the lecture. Today we're going to make the menu. So in Construct we're going to click on Menu, Project, New. We're going to choose SD Landscape 16 by 9. We're going to call our project Pixel Adventure and we want our orientation to be landscape. We'll start with an event sheet. We won't optimize for pixel art here because we're going to change some of the display settings manually. Click Create and we're presented with this. Now just a very quick overview of the Construct interface. On the left you have the Properties pane. This will give you the properties of any object you're looking at. Currently we're looking at the project itself, Pixel Adventure. So these are the properties of the project. And here we have the display properties. So our viewport size, which is what the camera sees or what we're zoomed in on, is this dotted line, and its size is 854 by 480. We have letterbox scale, full screen quality is high, our orientation is landscape. The sampling or texture filtering is set to trilinear. We can change that to nearest because we want to keep the sprite looking as near to the original as possible. We can turn on pixel rounding and everything else we can leave as it is. Now we've got one layout called layout 1, which we're now going to rename to menu, and we've got one event sheet which we'll rename to the menu event sheet as well. So let's right click on this and say rename, and we'll call it menu. And for the event sheet itself we will rename it to start menu, and we can even preface it with EV for event sheet, so we can call it EV start menu or EV menu. So let's right click and rename and say EV menu. So now we have the two there. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do with the menu is give it a background. And just before that, you'll notice that we have a lot of extra space around the viewport, which is really unnecessary. Our games are going to be single screen. So what we're going to do is get rid of this. So we're going to make the layout size match the event sheet size, and here you can see the size of the layout. So if we go to our Pixel Adventure and we just copy the viewport size, and then we go back to our layout, our menu layout here, we see the size and we paste it in there, press enter. Now we've managed to make everything one size. We don't have extra things around. So we're going to put a menu over here with the title of our game. We're going to have start a new game, continue the game, settings, and let's start by putting in a background to this menu. So if you go to the resources folder and you go to the Pixel Adventure file that I gave you to download, here it is. You'll see that in backgrounds we have a number of backgrounds. So we'll end up actually using all of them because we can change the background for each screen. So we'll use all these backgrounds as we go. So let's start now by seeing how our menu is going to work. So over here we have a layer, and we're going to rename this layer to menu. And that's where all the text will go. So let's actually let's start with our background first. So let's go background, and this is where our background is going to be, and the background is going to consist of the background sprite itself. So let's grab that. So if we double click and we search for a sprite object, there it is. Okay, we can call this tile BG, background, insert, and click anywhere. Now it wants the background. Now what we will do is we'll pull in all of those backgrounds that we have and drop them here. So there they all are, and I'll just delete this empty frame. So now we have all the background tiles that we have in our folder, and they're all in here. So now what we are going to do is make use of them. And if we close here, there you can see the tiles sitting there. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to create the effect of a moving background or a scrolling background. So what we're going to do is take this block for the background that we have got here, and we're going to tile the whole background with it, but each block is going to move one block up and to the right, so on a short diagonal. And once it's moved one block up and to the right, we reset it to its starting position. But we do this for all the blocks, so it will look like the screen is constantly moving up and to the right past the viewer. Now I'll show you what I mean by this. We'll start with just one block, and then we'll add in the rest, and you'll see the effect take shape. Now, in order to move the block back to its starting position, we need the coordinates, the X and Y coordinates of where the block originally was. Now, in order to keep track of that, we're going to use instance variables. So on our BG block here, we're going to click on instance variables, add new instance variable. I'm going to call it start X. That'll be the starting X position. And we'll add another one called start Y. That'll be the starting Y position. Now we know where to move the block back to once it has moved one block up and to the right. Now the block's size is 64 by 64. So once it has moved 64 pixels up and 64 pixels to the right, then we reset it back down. So it's moving one block up and coming down. Right, so we have to do this in the event sheet itself. So we're going to have to go and work in that event sheet now. So let's click on the EV menu. Now in the event sheet, you can double click anywhere to add an event, or you can start using the keyboard shortcuts, which is much better. So press E to create an event. Our event is going to be a system event, and it's going to be on the start of layout. So I'm going to search here for the word start, and there's on start of layout. So when the layout starts, we want to perform certain actions. Now to add an action, you can double click here or click on the word add action, or use the keyboard shortcut A for add action. The action we want is to go to our background block and set the frame. Now let's say we choose animation frame 1, so it's always going to start on frame 1. You could choose any of the frames. I'm just demonstrating that we can change the frame number for each screen so that each screen can have a different pattern for its background. I'm going to say done. In fact, I'm going to set this to frame 0 because that's actually the very first one. Now we want to record the position, the X and Y position of the current block, in fact of every block, so that we can move it back to that X and Y position once it's moved one block away diagonally. So we can click A to add another action, and we can go to our background block, and we want to set its variables, its instant variables. So we want to set the start X to the current block, which is itself, dot X, its current X. And we want to do the same for Y. So I'm going to add an action by pressing A. I'm going to click on set value, choose the start Y value, and I'm going to choose self.y. Okay, so I get the X and Y starting positions of the block. Now I'm going to create a new event. So I'm going to press E, and the event is going to, this is going to be how often or how quickly the block moves diagonally. So I'm going to say system every X seconds, and I'm going to say 0.050 seconds. This value, if you make it a smaller number, it's going to move the frames quicker. Make it a larger number, the background's going to move more slowly. So I'm going to go done. Now I'm going to add an action, and we're going to move it every 0.05 seconds, we're going to move it 1 pixel to the right and 1 pixel upwards. So we're going to say background, and we're going to set its X. So we're going to go down here to set X, and its X is going to be to whatever its current X is, okay, plus 1, so that's moving it 1 pixel to the right. I'm going to add another action, and I'm going to say set its Y to whatever its current Y is, -1. Now why -1 on the Y? Well, up in computer graphics is, or the vertical axis is negative when you're going up and positive when you're going down. So we're moving this to the right and up by 1 pixel. Now once it's moved up by 64 pixels, which is the size of a block, and once it's moved to the right by 64, it's 1 block away from where it was. We need to move it back to its starting block. So I'm going to click on this event, but I'm going to press B for blank event, or you can also right click and say new blank event, but I'm just going to press B on the keyboard. Now I've got a new blank event, and now I'm going to add the check to see if it's 64 pixels away. So I need to compare the X value. So I'm going to go here to compare X. I'm going to say, well, is the X equal to, is it 64 pixels away from the starting position? So I want to say, is X equal to the current block's start self.start X, right, plus 64. So is it 64 pixels away from its starting X? And I want to do another condition to check if it's 64 pixels away from its starting Y. So I can either right click and say add condition, add another condition, or I can use the keyboard shortcut and just press C on the keyboard to get a condition. And I can now compare the Y. So here's the Y. Is the Y equal to itself dot start Y minus 64, because it's reversed for the Y, because we're going up on the Y. So now, is it 64 pixels away from its original position on the X and the Y? If it is, then we can set its position back to these starting coordinates which we received. So we can go A for add action, background, and we can set position. Let's find it here. Set position. The X is going to be its self dot start X, and the Y will be its self dot start Y. Self dot start Y. So we move it back to its starting positions. So now you'll get an idea of what this is meant to look like once we have the whole screen filled with blocks. So if I run the project, there you can see that block moves and comes back. Once it's moved 1 block away, it comes back to its starting position. And we're going to make the whole screen do this. Now you saw it loop through all of the animations there. We can just change that quickly by going back to our layout. If we double click this, it looped through all these frames and stopped on the last one, and then just stuck on the last one and kept moving. That's because loop is off. So once it reached the last frame, it stayed on the last frame, but its speed is 5. So it went through all of these at 5 frames per second and stopped on the last one. If we just set this to 0, it won't change backgrounds. So if we run it again, you'll see that it stays on the one we want. Now there it is moving away and resetting. So now we're going to do this with multiple blocks. So what I'm going to do to help me, I'm going to go to the layout and I'm going to click on show grid. Well, we actually don't need the grid, but I'm going to click on snap to grid. And I'm going to snap it over there, right on the corner. Now to duplicate, I'm going to hold Control on the keyboard and left click and drag and drop. So that allows me to duplicate and drop tiles. So that's what I'm doing. I'm just going to go all the way across the screen. And once we're across, we'll do it row by row, which is going to be easier. So now we have it across. Now what I'm going to do is highlight the whole row, and I'm going to drag, duplicate down like this. Okay, so now we've covered everything. So now if we run our background, we get that infinite scrolling background look that we want for our menu. That's the end of this lecture. In the next one, we'll be adding the menu options and the title. See you then.